Bikurim Parak Aleph Mishnah Aleph. Yesh Mevin Bikurim V'Kairin Mevin V'Lo Kairin Yesh Einon Mevin. So the Mishnah is going to explain that there are those people who bring Bikurim and recite the Parsha of Bikurim, which is the Rami Eved Avi, which we spoke about in the Hakdama, Mevin V'Lo Kairin. There are those people who bring Bikurim but do not recite the passage of Rami Eved Avi Yesh Einon Mevin, and there are those who do not bring Bikurim. Again, when the owner of land in Eretz Yisrael sees that his fruits begin to ripen, he designates some of them as Bikurim. After they ripen and are harvested, he brings them to the Beis HaMikdash and gives them to the Kohanim. When he gets to the Beis HaMikdash, he recites a parsha in which he praises and thanks Hashem for having given him the land of Eretz Yisrael. The chiyuv to bring Bikurim and the chiyuv of mikra Bikurim are two separate mitzvahs. So this parak is going to list cases in which a person is obligated to do both mitzvahs, or only Bikurim, or neither of these things. Would depend on his land and what he has and what not. Elu she'einen meviim, here's a list of people that would not even bring Bikurim. After making a list, it's not unusual for the Mishnah to begin its explanation from the last item on the list, since that is the one that's just mentioned, so it just continues that way. So, Elu she'einen meviim, here's a list of people that do not even bring Bikurim. If someone plants a tree in his own land and bends a branch from it into the private property of another person or into public property so that the branch grows into a new tree there, bending a branch, over here we're talking about being mavrech, is referring to a procedure in which one digs a hole near a tree and bends a branch from the tree into the hole, covers the middle of the branch with earth, and makes the end of the branch stick up from the ground. Over time, the branch that sticks out of the ground takes root and grows into a new tree, and if it's a fruit tree, can produce fruit. So the Mishnah refers to a case where someone had the tip emerge in land that did not belong to him. It showed up in his neighbor's yard, or it showed up in a Rosh Hashanah. So there, that person would not bring Bikurim, and obviously if he doesn't bring the Bikurim, there's no need for him to read the Mikra Bikurim, because the Mikra Bikurim is attached to the mitzvah of Bikurim itself. Similarly, if someone bends a branch from a tree planted in private property of another person or public property into his own land, where the branch grows into a new tree, in this case, he took a branch from a tree that was standing in the property of somebody else and bent it so that the tip emerged from his own land. So in both cases, he cannot designate the fruit of either tree as Bikurim, because both trees draw some nourishment from land that's not his. And the law that one cannot bring Bikurim except from the fruit trees that grow entirely in his own land. The old tree draws nourishment not only from the land in which it stands, but also from the place of the new tree, since it's connected to the new tree by means of the buried branch. Likewise, the new tree is also nourished by the land occupied by the old tree. The owner, therefore, cannot bring Bikurim from the fruit of either tree, since he's getting nourishment from the land that's not his. In order for a person to be eligible to bring Bikurim, they must grow entirely from the land that belongs to him. This is a chiyuv min HaTorah, which we'll talk about in the next Mishnah. If someone plants a tree in his own land and bends a branch from it into another part of his own land, but there's a public path or a public road in the middle, there's a branch that passes beneath a public path, or it grows into a tree in his land on the other side, maybe he does not bring Bikurim from the fruit of either tree. Although both trees are in his rishos, he cannot designate the fruit as Bikurim, because the tree draws nourishment from the earth under the Derech HaRabim or the Derech HaYochid, which does not belong to him. Derech HaYochid does not mean that it's his private path. It means that it's a small path as opposed to a road. It's a path as opposed to a road. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Kazamevi, Rabbi Yehuda says that in a situation like this, he can't bring Bikurim from the fruit of either tree. According to Rabbi Yehuda, anyone has permission to dig a hole or a tunnel under public property, as long as it will not harm or inconvenience the public. Like the Mishnah talks in Bava Basra that if there's going to be heavy traffic over this hole and people or animals could fall in, so that would obviously be osur. So in our case, the owner was allowed to pass the branch through the earth under the public road, which means that his trees and the peiros that he wants to bring Bikurim from are drawing nourishment from the ground in a permitted way. So this makes it okay for these fruits to be brought as Bikurim, being that both trees stand in the owner's land and they draw only a small amount of nourishment from the earth under the public road. In this case, even though he doesn't actually own the earth but has permission to use it, so it's still considered good enough to bring Bikurim. and it's still going to be included in the pasuk of ha'adama asher nosatali. The Tanakama, on the other hand, rules that the owner does not even bring bikurim because he holds that it's always also to use the ground under public property, like the Tanan Bava Basra says. Therefore, if someone passed a branch under a public road, the trees on both sides draw the nutrients from land he's also to use, which disqualifies the fruits from being bikurim. Mishnah Beis, maybe why does one not bring bikurim from produce that draws some of its nourishment from another person's land? The pasuk state, Reishis bikuri ad moscha. It says regarding bikurim, the earliest of your fruits of your land, achiu kol hagedulim ad moscha. Reishis bikuri ad moscha. Ad moscha means specifically your land. You cannot bring bikurim from produce unless all of it grew from your land. And because of this, the Mishnah, the next halacha in the Mishnah is going to be understood very well also. Sharecroppers and aris is a farmer that farms the land of another person and pays the owner a share of the crop as rent. And a chaycher is a tenant farmer. He also farms the land of another person, but he pays the owner a fixed amount of produce each year, regardless of how much the land actually produces. The same halacha would apply to somebody who rents land as well. A sikrikin is a murderer who steals land by threatening to kill the owner. Even though the owner tells the sikrik to take the land, he does not really intend to give up its ownership because he expects that one day he will recover it in court. And from Bezdin maybe, that's a shiloh, it's a big shiloh, it's a big nidin in the Gemara and Gidden, on Dafnun Dalet and Dafnun Hey, if he could get it back or not. And Gazlan is a robber, so he doesn't bring bikurim for the same reason, because the pasuk states that the earliest of the first fruits of your land, since these people do not own the land on which they're working on, or which they have taken, they cannot bring bikurim from these peiros. Mishnah Gimel, which fruits do you bring bikurim from? So we already mentioned in the Hakdama, ein mevin bikurim chutz b'shivas haminim. One does not bring bikurim from produce other than the shivas haminim, for which Eretz Yisrael is praised, which is chita, sa'ira, gefen, te'ena, rimain, zeisim, and tamarim, or Eretz Yisrael dvash, like the pasuk says in the dvash. We know from the Gemara is referring to dvash tamarim, which is the olives of dates. Pasuk says, "V'lekachta mereishis kol priya adama shatav me'artzecha." You shall take from the first of every fruit of the ground that you bring in from your land. Since the pasuk tells us to take from the first fruits from the first, it implies that only certain fruit from the fruits is always a miut. To what's mereishis, it's going to be memayit to other peiros. So we know that the ikar mitzvah is going to be obviously from the shivas haminim. Bikurim are not brought from the dates of mountains. Dates that grow in mountains produce less honey than the dates of the low-lying areas. So when the Torah refers to tamarim, the Torah says eretz shemen udvash, which implies that dates are desirable because of the honey they produce. So in order for it to be considered the muvchar, or the choice quality, peiros to bring for bikurim, it should be loimi tamarim shabaharim, but it should be from tamarim that grow in flat areas, the loimi peiros shaba'amokim, not from the fruits of the valleys. This is anything besides for dates. Those that grow in mountains taste better than those that grow in low-lying areas. Not from oil olives that are not from the best quality, because the sometimes they can get ruined if it rains on them. So if it's not good quality, you should not bring them as bikurim. One may not bring bikurim before the yomtiv of Shavuos. The people of Har Tzavayim once brought their bikurim before Shavuos, and the Kehanim didn't accept the bikurim from them because the pasuk says, the pasuk says regarding the korban ashtei lechem, which is brought on Shavuos, which was a korban tzibur that was brought on Shavuos, which was 2 loaves, 2 chalas, made from wheat of the new crop, just like the oimer is matir the chadash for the Medina, for everybody. The Shtei Halachem is Matir Chodesh in the Mikdash. So the pasuk says V'chag HaKotzir, which is referring to Shavuos, Bikurei Masecha Shetzir Basada, when you bring the first fruits of your labor that you planted in the field, which is referring to the Shtei Halachem. The pasuk describes the Shtei Halachem as the first fruits, which teaches that the Shtei Halachem must be the first offering, the first carbon brought from the new peiros. All other carbonates from the new crop, such as Bikurim, may not be brought until after they bring the Shtei Halachem. So Bikurim cannot be brought before Shavuos because that's when the Shtei Halachem is going to be brought. For the same reason, it's also to bring menachas from the grain of the new crop before the Shtei Lechem, before you makriv the Shtei Lechem on Shavuos. Mishnah Dalet, Elam Avin V'Loi Kurim. These people bring Bikurim but do not say the Mikra Bikurim. Hager Mevi Ve'en Keri, a Ger, or even a descendant of Gerim, brings Bikurim but he doesn't recite the Pasuk, because he can't say the Pasuk that Hashem gave us the land that he swore to our forefathers and gives it to us. Zok the Rab, She'en Avois of Israel, his parents, his ancestors did not come from the Yidden. Gerim lenot l'chelik ba'aretz. And Gerim never got a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. The Rambam Kosav, the Rambam writes, She'en halacha k'mishnah zu, the halacha is not like this Mishnah. Ela hager mevi v'kairei. Avada, a ger brings a carbon, brings bikurim, and he says the mikra bikurim just like everybody else. Umati l'mem alav etzenu lasas lanu. And he's able to say that Eretz Yisrael was given to our fathers and was given to us. Memnesha Eretz Nitna LaAvram. Eretz Yisrael was given to Avram Avinu Avla Gerim Kamoili Yisrael. He's the father of Gerim. He became part of Klal Yisrael. So he's a Ger. He's part of Klal Yisrael, just like Klal Yisrael is the descendants of Avram Avinu. He was Nichnas Tachas Kanfei Hashchina. By this person being Nichnas Tachas Kanfei Hashchina, he becomes part of the children of Avram. Ki Av Hamayin Goyim Nesaticha. It says, I will make you the father of all the Goyim. V'darshin on Bey, and the Yerushalmi says, L'sha'ovar Yisa Avla Aram. Avram, before the hay was added, was Avla Aram. He was Avram. He was just the father of Avram. Now that you added the hay, so now you became the forefather of the entire world, all the nations of the world. The same halach is true when he davens, as we're going to see in the Mishnah very soon. Whether he's davening quietly or whether he's davening for the tzibur, he says he doesn't change the nusach hatfilah. There's no special nusach hatfilah for a ger. He says the same nusach as everybody else. Even if his mother's not Jewish, it doesn't matter. He can still say because he's a descendant of Avraham Avinu, because he's nichnas tachas kanfei hashchina. So again, these people can bring bikurim but do not recite the pasuk. A ger brings the pasuk, bikurim, but he doesn't recite the pasuk. Because he can't say the pasuk that Hashem gave to us and to our forefathers, because it wouldn't be true since he's not descended from the forefathers of the Jewish people. Israel may be vikar, but if his mother is a yid, now what if his father's a yid? As we'll see in a minute. When one of his parents has unbroken Jewish yichus, so he brings bikurim and recites the psukim because he's descended from the Avis on one side of his family. Meaning, even though it may not be that side of the family that would give him the rights to the land in Eretz Yisrael, but al kapanim, he's from Jewish descent, so that's going to be good enough for him to be able to say the psukim and read the parsha bikurim. When he damaged Shemini Esrei by himself, instead of saying Elikei Aveisenu, he says Oimer Elikei Aveis Yisrael. He says the God of the forefathers of the Yidden. When he's davening publicly in shul, he is the Shatz. He's repeating Shemini Esrei out loud. Oimer Elikei Aveisechem. He says Hashem of your forefathers, meaning that he's not from them. But if his mother or his father is a regular Yid, one of his parents has Yiddish Yichus, he can say Elikei Aveisenu, and it's not a problem. The Yerushalmi says that there's a time that disagrees with this Mishnah, and he says that a ger may say Elikei Aveisenu and Haaretz Hashem Nesat Aveisenu, as we just explained. Mishnah, B'derech Klal, I would venture to say that the gerim have no difference in mitzvahs than, and other than maybe a couple of yichus or who they can marry, there is no less of a chiva for them to wear tefillin or to be shomer Shabbos or to keep kosher than to keep any of the other mitzvahs. Just this is an issue because we're saying Elikei Aveisenu. So I guess this time holds that any time that there's a reference to Elikei Aveisenu, so then, or anything of that type, then he would have to change the nusach. But Avada, we know the Rambam brings this Shitas Yerushalmi that's not the case, and we say that he'll make kiddush like everyone else, he'll daven like everyone else, the same he was tefillin like everyone else. Mishnah Hey, Reb Lezben Yaakov says, Isha bas gerim loitinos el kahuna. A woman who's the daughter of gerim, or the daughter of people who descended from gerim, may not be married to a kohen asher tehei imay mi Yisrael, unless her mother or father is a regular yid, someone who has unbroken Jewish lineage. Furthermore, even if both of the woman's parents are gerim or descendants of gerim, but a grandparent on either side has yichus as a Yisrael, she's mutter to be married to a Kohen. Regarding both Gerim and Abadim Shachar, which were Goyim that then became Aved Kanani to a Yid, and then he was freed. So then the Mechuyev in mitzvahs like an Isha, and then once they get Meshuchar, then they have all Dina Yisrael. When he gets freed, he must finish his Gerus by being Tovel in a mikvah, and then he becomes Mechuyev in all the mitzvahs. So an Eved Meshuchar has the same status as a Ger, and if he's married, if the slave is a Shivcha, if she's a female, so then she's forbidden to be married to a Kohen. Even after 10 generations have passed since they were Gerim or Mishuchrarim, each of their descendants has the status of a Ger with respect to the Isser against marrying Kohanim. A female descendant may not be married to a Kohen Iman Israel unless the descendant's mother or father is an ordinary Yid, someone who has unbroken Jewish Yichus. When someone converts to Yiddishkeit, or an Eved becomes Meshuchar and marries another Ger, their children have the status of the Ger, who in turn transmit it to their children, and so on. This continues until somewhere along the line, someone marries a regular Yid who doesn't have this type of Yichus. The children of this marriage do not have the status of Yichus, and do not have the status of a Ger, and their daughter is therefore mutter to a Kohen. According to Belez ben Yaakov, a daughter of Gerim is also to a Kohen unless she has Jewish ancestors who are born Jewish. According to Belez ben Yaakov, the sheet of Belez ben Yaakov is disputed by Rabbi Yossi in Kedushin. According to Rabbi Yossi, the daughter of a Gerim is mutter to marry a Kohen, even if she does not have any Jewish-born ancestors. The halacha is that a Kohen may not marry a woman who is descended entirely from Gerim, but if he did, they're not mechuyev to divorce. It's just interesting because people say that the best yichus is a ger, because there's no sveikus. You know that they just started now, so it's very fresh yichus, so to speak. So there's never going to be a shayla. Hopefully, there'll never be a shayla about yuchsin, which unfortunately many times things do get complicated. The Mishnah returns to the list which we began in the previous Mishnah of people who bring bikurim but do not recite the mikra bikurim. Apotropis is the guardians of Yisaimim who want to bring the bikurim of the Yisaimim to the Beis HaMikdash. He manages the estate or the affairs of the Ketanim Yisaimim. So Bezdin is Maman and Apotropis. So there's two ways really that a person can get an apotropos, either through Bezdin or through the father before the father passes away, by shliach, or a shliach appointed by the Bailam to bring the bikurim to the Beis HaMikdash. We have an Eved, again, is a Eved Meshuchrer that has bikurim that grew in his own land. Isha, a woman who has bikurim that grew in her own land, v'tumtum, or an androgynous, not sure if he's a zachar, if he's in a keva. All these bikurim, all these people bring bikurim, but do not recite the mikra bikurim because they cannot say the words that I've brought the first fruit to the land that Hashem has given me. The apotropos and the shliach cannot say that you've given me because he's bringing bikurim from the land that's not his. The Eved and the Isha, the Tumtum and the Androgynous can't say this either, because when Eretz Yisrael was originally divided for the Shvatim, it was not given to people from these groups. It was given, it was neschalak to specifically to the ish, and not to the nekevis, and not to those that are suffik ish or isha. A tumtum is a person whose private area is covered by an area which is covered by a thick skin, so it's not known whether he's a male or a female. An androgynous has both male and female organs, and the last parak of the Masechta is going to be dedicated and devoted to the halachas of understanding androgynous. Mishnah Vav. If someone buys two fruit trees that are in the property of another person and it was not specified whether the sale included the land in which the trees grow, maybe the buyer brings bikurim from the fruit of these trees but doesn't say the mikra bikurim. The reason is because this Tana holds that it's not clear whether he was kind of the land together with the trees. Since it were mesupik, whether he owns this land, his chiyuv to bring bikurim from the trees is also mesupik, because one doesn't bring bikurim unless he knows on which land the pears grew, as we learned in Mishnah Beis. So the halacha is in this type of pears, since he's more mesupik, if he owns the land, he's mechuyev to bring bikurim to be yotze that, to be yotze from that suffix. But on the other hand, since he may not own the land, so we don't say, he doesn't say the mikra bikurim because it's going to be he's still masupik, so it may not be true if he's going to say Oretz Hashem Nesat alone. Rameir says he brings bikurim and he says the parsha bikurim because according to Rameir, when 2 or more trees are sold, it's vadai that the sale included the land, even if the land wasn't mentioned. Therefore, the buyer is mechuyev and all the chiyuvim of bikurim, which includes the mikra bikurim. There's no suffix. It's only according to the Tanakama or masupik ikana karka iloi, if he was kind of the karka together with the trees or not. So therefore, hilkach maybe misafik ve'enei karev misafik. V'davka shtei ilanis, but that's specifically 2 trees. Or shleish ilanis, 3 trees. Kulei alma maidu, everyone agrees the kana karka that the ground comes along with it. Maybe v'kairei, and he's going to be maybe v'kairei. And Rameir maybe v'kairei because Rameir the savar hakayin shnei ilanis nami kana karka shetachteim v'chutz lahem. This Rameir holds that even when a person buys only 2 trees, he's still kind of a decent sized piece of land that comes along with the trees. Kamlei or v'salai, the share of a basket from underneath the spread of the leaves of the tree. Ve'en halacha kremer, but the halacha is not like kremer. We go like the Tanakama, mi safek. Yavash hamayon, niktatz ha'ilon, maybe ve'enei kairei. If someone owns a tree that received water from a spring, but the spring dried up, so the tree wasn't able to produce any fruits, niktas ilon, or the tree was cut down, maybe ve'enei kairei brings bikurim from the fruit that it has already begun to grow on the tree, but he doesn't say the mikra bikurim. When a tree becomes unable to bear fruit, it's as though the land itself has been destroyed and lost. In the bikurim, in the mikra bikurim, we don't say the mikra bikurim because it says ha'oretz Hashem Nesat alonu, and if the oretz is destroyed, then you wouldn't say that. Rabbi Yehuda says he does bring bikurim and he does recite the mikra bikurim because despite the state of the tree, that the tree is not here anymore, but the land still exists. Since the karka still exists, we're not concerned about the tree, we're concerned about the karka, and the karka is fine. The ikar mitzvah of havas bikurim and mikra bikurim is going to be from Shavuos until Sukkot. One brings bikurim and recites the mikra bikurim. From Sukkot until Chanukah, one brings bikurim, but he doesn't say the pasuk. The Torah says in the parsha of bikurim, "V'samachta b'chol ha'tov shenasa l'cha Hashem alekecha." And you shall rejoice in all the good that Hashem has given you. This teaches that bikurim is to be recited only during the time of year when people rejoice over the harvest. The rejoicing, this man simcha, lasts from Shavuos until Sukkot, when the crabs are brought indoors to protect them from the coming rain. So it's learned from a pasuk in the Torah that bikurim may be brought as long as similar fruits can still be found on the land, which is the case until Chanukah. But after Chanukah, there's no more pears that are going to be growing in the ground. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira oimer maybe v'karei. However, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says that even between Sukkot and Chanukah, he brings bikurim and recites the parsha because Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira holds that the time of reciting the mikra bikurim is not limited to this man simcha. The mikra bikurim is recited even after Sukkot, even after there's no longer zman simcha. The loy darish is samach the zman simcha. It's not limited. I mean, the mitzvah of simcha is not limited to the zman simcha. Okay. Mishnah Zayin. Hivish bikurim from Mochasadeu. If someone designated his bikurim from some of the species in his field, and then he sold his field, maybe ve'enei kairei, he brings the bikurim that he designated, but doesn't recite the parasha, since he doesn't own the land. But the second one, the one who bought the land, maybe from the species that had already been designated as bikurim, he does not bring more bikurim, because once you brought it once, you don't bring it again. But from a different species growing in that field, he does bring bikurim and does recite the parasha. Rabbi Yehuda says that even though he already brought it, he still brings more bikurim and says the mikra bikurim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the pasuk refers to land that has just one owner, in which he cannot bring bikurim more than once from a particular species. But because I can't bring bikurim from my grapes twice, but if I bring bikurim from my grapes, and then Shimon brings bikurim from the grapes that I sold him, that's perfectly fine, because you could only bring from your pears once, and that's what he's doing over here. Mishnah Ches. Hivrish bikurav nivzizu namaku nignavu avdoy shenitmu maybe acherim tachteim ve'enei kairei. If someone designated his bikurim and they were plundered, which means they were stolen, meaning someone grabbed them away, namaku, they ratted away, nignavu, they were stolen. Nivzizu means that they were seized openly, while stolen refers to what was taken secretly, meaning the difference between a ganav and a gazlan, oishin avdu, or they were lost, oishin nitmu, they became tamei, maybe achem tachteim, he brings others in their place. The owner of the Bikurim is mechuyev to bring them to the Beis HaMikdash. If he can't bring the ones that he originally designated, he must bring others instead. And we're going to see a pasuk. The Mishnah is going to bring a pasuk for this. So maybe ve'enei kairei, but he doesn't say the parish of Bikurim. Since these are not his original Bikurim, it would be inappropriate for him to say that he brought the Reishis Bikuri Ad Mascha because it's not from the Reishis anymore. Hashniyim, but the second one is the replacement Bikurim Enu Chem Nalem Chaimesh. One who's not a kohen is not obligated to pay the penalty of a chaimesh for eating them by mistake. Bikurim is called truma, like the pasuk says. Therefore, like truma, bikurim may be eaten only by a kohen and the members of his household. And for non-kohen ate bikurim by mistake, he didn't know they were bikurim. He didn't know that it was asur to eat bikurim. He must pay the kohen a value of what he ate plus a chaimesh. And as we're going to learn in Parak Beis, so our Mishnah teaches that one who ate bikurim, the bikurim shniyim, does not have to add a chaimesh since they're not the reishis bikurim ad mascha. So the chaimesh does not apply to that. The chaimesh only applies to the yekar reishis bikurim. Nitmu ba'azara, however, if the original bikurim became tamei in the azara, he does not replace them. Noifetz ve'enei kairei, he shakes them out of the basket onto the floor of the azara, and he does not say the pasuk. Why does he do this? What's this over here? Once the bailam brought the bikurim to the Beis HaMikdash, he's already out his chiyuv and is no longer mechuyev to replace them if they are lost or ruined. Bikurim should be brought in a basket. So over here, he shakes them out of the basket to publicly demonstrate that they are tameh and not eaten. He throws them on the floor. When he throws something on the floor, it shows that you don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. The empty basket is given to a kohen anyways, because you anyways give it to a kohen, like the pasuk says, the kohen should take the basket from your hand, indicates that sometimes the kohen will take only the basket with the bikurim that were inside, without the bikurim that were inside. So maybe ve'enei kairei, so noifetz ve'enei kairei, he shakes them out and he doesn't say the parasha of bikurim. In connection with the mitzvah, the Torah says, the pasuk teaches that the mikra bikurim should be said in a state of happiness and joy. Such joy is lacking when the bikurim are lost or ruined. Although the Mishnah mentions in the Chatzar, the halacha is that even if the bikurim became tamei when he's on the Har HaBayis, he's already yotze his chiyuv and doesn't need to replace them. This is going to be moved forward in the next Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that the Chatzar, our Mishnah mentions the Chatzar to teach that even if the bikurim were tahar when they were brought to the Har HaBayis, and they didn't become tamei until they got into the Chatzar, and he still should not recite the parasha of bikurim. Mishnah Tes, and where do we learn that the owner is responsible for them until he brings them into the Beis HaMikdash? Shenemar, into the Har HaBayis, not the Beis HaMikdash. Shenemar, Reishis Bikuri Ad Mascha Tavi Beis Hashem Alekecha. The pasuk says, the earliest of your first fruits of your land you shall bring to the house of Hashem. Malamed Shachai Bachar Yusam Ad Sheyavi LaHar HaBayis. This teaches us that he's responsible for them until he brings them into the Har HaBayis. So if they become puzzle or something goes wrong with them before that point, he must replace them. If someone brought bikurim for one species of fruits and was mekayim the mitzvah of mikra bikurim, and later brought bikurim again that year from a different species, first he brought grapes and then he brought figs, he does not recite the passage a second time. A person must bring bikurim from all the shivas haminim that grow on his land. However, if he brings only some species first and other species later, he recites the parasha the first time. The halacha is learned from the pasuk of Yigadati Hayoim, and the drasha is Magid ve'enei chayzeru Magid. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda said earlier, Mishnah Zayin, Magid ve'chayzeru Magid, Kamash Malan, the made Rabbi Yehuda, the Adam Echad, enei Magid ve'chayzeru Magid. Over here, Rabbi Yehuda is going to be masking that he's not going to be chayzeru Magid, he does not have to repeat the parasha of Mikra Bikurim, because he already said it the first time he brought it with the first group of Paris that he brought to the Beis HaMikdash. Mishnah Yud. These are people that bring bikurim and recite Mikra Bikurim and Atzeres. V'adachag, one brings bikurim from Shavuos till Sukkos. Bikurim may not be brought before Shavuos, and Mikra Bikurim is not recited after Sukkos. Mishevas Haminim, it could only be from the Shivas Haminim, which is wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. From good quality fruits such as the fruits of the mountains and dates of the valleys and good oil-producing olives. Me'eva HaYarden, even if they're not from the main part of Eretz Yisrael, but from the east side of the Yarden. This is the land east of the Yarden that was conquered by that was conquered from Sichain and Oig, and it was given to Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi, Shevet, and Menashe. So the produce of this area is mechuyev and trumas and and all the other mitzvahs atliyas ba'aretz. So this time is teaching us that this produce is also going to be mechuyev in bikurim, just like it's mechuyev in all other mitzvahs atliyas ba'aretz. Rabbi Yisrael Glili Omer en mevin bikurim me'ever hayarden she'ein eretz zavas chalav v'dvash. Rabbi Yisrael Glili says that we do not bring bikurim from Ever hayarden because it's not a land flowing with milk and honey, which is how the pasuk refers to bikurim. So and that's where the chiyuv of bikurim comes from, that it's dafka from a place that's flowing with milk and honey. And being that Ever hayarden agama could be its mechuyev and other mitzvahs hatuliyos va'aretz, but because over here we have a specific pasuk that tells us that it has to be in a place it has to be from a place that's eretz zavas chalav v'dvash. Ever hayarden does not have the din of eretz zavas chalav v'dvash. Therefore, basically says they will not bring bikurim from that area. Mishnah Yud Aleph Hakaina Shloisha Ilanis B'Sech Shel Chaveri Maybe Vikari. Earlier in Mishnah Vav, we mentioned the machlekes regarding someone who bought 2 trees in the land of another person. So the Tanakama holds that the buyer brings bikurim, but he doesn't read the parasha, but a mayor requires him to say the mikra bikurim as well. So Hakaina Shloisha Ilanis B'Sech Shel Chaveri, if someone buys 3 trees that are in the property of another person, maybe Vikari, he brings bikurim from their fruits and recites the parasha, because the sale of 3 or more trees includes the land on which they grew, even if the land was not actually mentioned, but the buyer owns not only the trees, but also the land beneath them, which makes him mechuyev in all the hilchos bikurim. Rameir Emer Afilu Shnayim, Rameir says even if someone bought only 2 trees, he brings bikurim from their fruit and recites the mikra bikurim, as Rameir said earlier in Mishnah Vav. And certainly if you brought 3 trees, meaning that he doesn't have to specify anything about the trees, according to Rameir when you buy 2, and according to the Tanakama when you buy 3. This is a big sugya of Abasa, the Gemara goes through different zachen, why yeah, why not? B'chlal, when you sell a house, what does it come with? When you sell trees, what does it come with? When you sell land, what does it come along with? Kana ilan v'karkoi, maybe v'kairei, if someone brought a single tree together with its land, the land was explicitly included in the sale, maybe v'kairei, avada, everyone agrees that he brings bikurim from that tree, and is mechuyev mikra bikurim since he owns the land beneath the tree. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, av bali arisas v'chachayres meviim v'kairei. Even sharecroppers and chachayres that we mentioned in the Mishnah Beis have to say the mikra bikurim. Why? Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, the right of a sharecropper or a chaycher to take share of the crops gives him some degree of bailus in the land. So this level of bailus is enough for him to be mechuyev to bring bikurim and also to say mikra bikurim. Now, we have to explain something over here that Rabbi Yehuda is referring to arisim and chachayres who have the exclusive rights to work in particular fields and thus entitled to a share of the produce forever. This is in contrast to those who are granted the right to work on the land only 1 year at a time. This is something that they have a share in it forever. So the Arizan and Chachayres, who have exclusive rights, enjoy such a strong hold in the land that they're mechuyev to bring bikurim from its fruit. Not that they're be'et in the bailam, but because they have a stark tfis in the land, therefore they would be mechuyev to, according to Yehuda, to be mevi v'kairei.